was asking about the movie, and I asked him about that one particular part where everybody's talking, and they all cried out Epstein Island. And I went, oh, okay. Now I understand what we're up against.
It's an 8-armed octopus. And if you take just out, that arm will grow back. You have to take the head.
That was the moment everything clicked for Jim Caviezel. Not at a dinner party, not in some leaked document. At a movie theater, when an entire audience screamed one name in unison. A name that would force him to confront something far darker than Hollywood's secrets. A name he would spend the next years connecting to missing children, failed trials, and a pattern no one in power wanted to acknowledge. That's not speculation. That's not conspiracy. That's a billionaire's school where young girls simply vanished from official records. And the woman who built it has never answered a single hard question about where they went. This is the story nobody is connecting until now. Before you can understand what Jim Caviezel is about to reveal, you need to understand who he actually is. Because this isn't some anonymous voice on the internet throwing accusations into the void. This is a man who stood on one of the biggest screens in the world and played Jesus Christ. A man at the absolute peak of Hollywood success. A man who then walked away from everything, and I mean everything, to make a film that the entire industry tried to bury. Most people think they know his story, the Passion of the Christ. That's where it stopped for casual audiences. But that movie was just the beginning of something much larger.
Children represent God. They're the most innocent and like God, and that's why the devil wants to kill them. Wants to hurt them.
Those aren't the words of someone making a casual statement. Those are the words of someone who has looked directly into the machinery of child trafficking and understood its purpose. Not economically, spiritually. He understood he was in a fight against something organized, something with reach, something that had been operating in plain sight for decades. That understanding led him to Sound of Freedom, a film about Tim Ballard, a former Homeland Security agent who left his career to personally rescue children from trafficking networks operating across Latin America. A real man, real operations, real children saved.
Everyone was told, from Rupert Murdoch, from Fox, to every studio, look, if you touch this thing, you will be out, you will be done. You'll be finished in 3 years.
Read that back slowly. Every major studio, every major network told, not asked, told to stay away from a movie about rescuing children from trafficking. And most of them obeyed. Think about that. A film about saving kids. A film about heroism. A film that showed the reality of trafficking networks operating in real time. And the entire machinery of Hollywood united to kill it. Why would they do that? That's the question Jim Caviezel started asking. Publicly, on stage, in interviews. And the answer he kept finding had names attached to it. To understand why Caviezel connected one woman to a global trafficking network, you need to know the real story of what happened at the Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy for Girls in South Africa. And I'm not talking about the version you saw on magazine covers in 2007. I'm talking about what actually occurred inside those walls. In 2007, after meeting with Nelson Mandela, Oprah made a public promise. She said she wanted to build a school for poor and disadvantaged girls. She poured $40 million into a 28-building campus. 2 theaters, a yoga studio, a beauty salon, free uniforms, free books, free meals, everything. The world watched and called her a saint. Front pages, magazine covers, the great humanitarian. But within months, not years, months, the cracks started showing. And what came out of those cracks was not a minor scandal. It was a horror story. 7 victims came forward, 7 young girls pulled from poverty, girls given what was supposed to be the opportunity of their lives, and they found themselves being victimized inside the very walls Oprah built for them. Now here's where most people stop the story. People stop, they think, well, there was a scandal, it got handled, move on. But that's not what happened. What happened next is where the real horror emerges. After the staff was fired and a lockdown was implemented, the girls didn't feel protected. They felt imprisoned. Parents, actual mothers, began describing the school not as a place of safety, but as something closer to a detention camp. 2-hour supervised visits, restricted diets, no outside contact. One parent said directly, "Surely this isn't a prison or an institution. The poor children are not even allowed to have any treat." These were girls from impoverished communities, girls who had been promised opportunity, and now they were being isolated, cut off from family, controlled in every dimension of their lives inside a compound that Oprah controlled completely. And then the trial collapsed. Virginia Macapo, charged with 14 counts of indecent acts against children, was acquitted. The magistrate said the testimony was contradictory, lacked corroboration. Just like that, it was over. No convictions, no justice. 9 girls stood up, and not one of them got justice. And that's the question that breaks the entire narrative open. Because beyond the court case, beyond the failed trial, there are persistent, widespread reports about something far more disturbing. Reports that have circulated online for years. Reports that that mainstream media has consistently refused to investigate. Missing girls, not alleged, not suspected, claimed and reported by people with direct knowledge of the situation. An unknown number of girls from Oprah's South African Academy simply vanished. No records, no explanations, no investigation launched by a woman with billions of dollars, a global media platform, and unlimited resources to find the truth. She went silent. Jim Caviezel looked at that silence, and he connected it to something else, something that had been quietly making its way into public record through court filings, depositions, and flight logs that nobody wanted to discuss. Jeffrey Epstein ran the most sophisticated child trafficking operation ever uncovered in American history. His private jet, the Lolita Express, flew the most powerful people in the world to his private island. Politicians, billionaires, Hollywood legends, tech moguls, all documented in flight logs that slowly, painfully made their way into public consciousness. Now, here's what the media won't tell you. There is no confirmed flight log placing Oprah on the Lolita Express herself. But here is what we do know. Her former business partner, the woman she co-founded Oxygen Media with, Geraldine LeBourne, was found in Epstein's private jet logs. That is confirmed, that is documented. And Caviezel, who has studied these networks with the obsession of a man who has seen what they do to children firsthand, sees a pattern that he says is impossible to dismiss.
It's an 8-armed octopus. And if you take just out, that arm will grow back. You have to take the head.
What he's saying is clear. You don't investigate individual predators. You don't arrest single operators. You trace the infrastructure. You find who organizes access, who legitimizes the network, who makes it safe for powerful people to participate without fear of exposure. And that's where Oprah Winfrey comes into focus. Not as a bystander, not as an innocent person who made bad friends, but as what Caviezel calls it directly, the gatekeeper. A gatekeeper in trafficking networks is not the person who commits the act. A gatekeeper is the person who controls access, who determines who gets in and who gets out, who builds the trust infrastructure that makes the whole operation possible. Think about what Oprah controls. Decades of television, a magazine, a book club that can make any author a household name overnight, a film production company, political connections at the highest levels. She was publicly credited with swinging the 2008 election toward Barack Obama. She has promoted doctors, healers, spiritual leaders, and lifestyle gurus to audiences of tens of millions. She decides who gets legitimized, who gets a platform, who becomes trustworthy in the eyes of the American public.
With Naomi Campbell, he had Oprah Winfrey there with him, who entered the room and was swinging off his arm and just seemed like a very dear friend. And these, like Oprah, Naomi, Rita, and Georgina, they all sat at his table. And for me, meeting Oprah was like,
A young woman trusted a predator because Oprah was standing next to him. That's not a coincidence. That's a mechanism. It's a system. That's the infrastructure of how this works. Oprah's presence, her brand, her image, her reputation as the world's moral compass was being used as a trust mechanism to lower the defenses of young women who would never have trusted Weinstein alone. She made him safe. She gave him legitimacy. And in doing so, she became part of the machinery. And it didn't stop with Weinstein, a man later convicted of serially assaulting dozens of women, a man whose background any basic researcher could have flagged in an afternoon. And yet Oprah gave him a global platform, a stamp of legitimacy, access to her audience's trust. And when his world began to collapse,
And anybody who knows me knows if there is a party, I'm the first one out.
this is the pattern: proximity, validation, silence, rebrand, and then, perfectly timed to redirect public attention, the philanthropy surge, the Maui fundraising, the Golden Globe speech about believing survivors, the Me Too pivot. Every time the heat gets close, Oprah doesn't run. She rebrands. She becomes the solution to the very problem she was part of creating. And throughout this entire pattern, one thing remains constant: the girls from her school, the missing ones, the ones whose names we don't know, the ones whose faces aren't in any official record. They have never been explained. Jim Caviezel has a specific theory about how people like Oprah Winfrey operate within these networks. He doesn't just call her an enabler, he calls her structural. She is the human infrastructure that makes predatory systems appear safe, trustworthy, and even aspirational to the public. And beyond Oprah, he points to something larger, something that most people haven't connected. There are networks like this all over the world, plural, systems operating through channels that never appear in public record, maintained by people who control media, who shape public perception, who decide what stories get told and which ones get buried, and the suppression of Sound of Freedom proves it. Why would anyone who had nothing to hide want to stop a movie about rescuing trafficked children? Why would Rupert Murdoch and Fox and every major studio unite unite to kill it.
Why are they so opposed, so frantic in antagonizing Sound of Freedom?
Because the film threatens to pull a thread. Because once people understand how these networks operate, the trust mechanisms, the legitimization, the gatekeepers, they start seeing the patterns everywhere. They start asking questions about people they've been taught to trust. They start demanding investigations that powerful people don't want to answer. And that's when everything changes. Jim Caviezel has been saying publicly at conferences, in interviews, on stages, that something is coming. He calls it a storm. He says it will involve mass arrests. He says celebrities should be nervous, but he's also said something else, something that most people have overlooked, something about the sheer scale of what's at stake.
I believe it's going to move a lot of whistleblowers to come forward, but not one. In the hundreds, maybe thousands of them worldwide start coming forward and telling the truth of what's really going on.
That's not the language of someone talking about a small operation. That's the language of someone who knows the full scope and is bracing the public for what's coming. Hundreds, maybe thousands, worldwide. And the children, the missing children. That is not a rhetorical question. That is an open criminal investigation. And every name in the Epstein files, every person on those flight logs, every attendee at those private dinners, every guest in those estate basements is a potential answer to that question. The girls from Oprah's school, the missing children at the border, the ones rescued in Sound of Freedom, the ones we know about, the ones we don't. They're all part of the same pattern, the same machinery, the same network operating through trust, legitimacy, and access maintained by people who appear on the surface to be the safest, most beloved figures in public life. Here's what Jim Caviezel actually believes, stated plainly. Child trafficking is not a fringe problem. It operates through networks of trust maintained by gatekeepers, people who control media, people who control perception, people who decide which stories get told. And he believes that one question remains unanswered. One investigation has never been launched. One accountability has never been demanded.
Are we going to let our children go? And that's a question, and people have to answer.
That question isn't rhetorical. For Caviezel, it is the entire point. Every system that protects children requires that the adults in power choose consciously, actively to protect them. And his argument is that Oprah Winfrey had every resource, every platform, and every opportunity to ask hard questions about the people around her. And she didn't. She chose not to. Or as Caviezel implies, she chose something else entirely.
If we make this just about Harvey Weinstein, then we will have lost this moment.
Children of the Machine is still being finished. The team Anne Heche was working with, reportedly still underground, still building the case, has said they will release it no matter what. And when they do, the names you've heard in this video will not be the last ones. They'll be the beginning. This story is not over. It is just getting started. Stay locked in.